today we're going to talk about improving air quality. We're going to talk about an approach and resource bias and economics of market-based training programs. It's very important to control the pollution, not only for the environment, so we can keep it healthy, but also for the economy to make it prosper. So today we're going to talk about how we're going to control the pollution of stationary sources. It's a little easier to implement and to control the stationary sources of pollution, and we're going to talk today about how we're going to do that using the dual control approach in the training programs.
Hello, so now I would like to talk about the dual control approach and new source bias. This is one of the instruments that government use to control the stationary source. So what stationary source is? Stationary source is a fixed site producer of pollution. For example, it could be like the electricity power plants or chemical plants or steel mills or buildings. And also this approach is based on benefit cost analysis. So this analysis is a strategy that compares the marginal social benefit to the associated marginal social cost. And also this the dual control approach gives the government more direct supervision on the companies on which its economy depends. So, and also the producers can get both incentive and opportunity to get the more stringent, to avoid the more stringent or to get costlier. So the dual means two. That means that there are two sets of standards, abatement standards that government use to control the stationary source. These are the first one is the existing source. So existing source is controlled by the government, and the government set up abatements, the more lenient abatement standards for the businesses. So they can get incentive from this, and is cheaper than the other standards. Let's say that because in the country the government want to attract more investors, to create new jobs, to let them pay more taxes. So they would use this approach to keep these producers stay with them, stay in the country, and they will not leave the country. And the second one is the second one is they call the new source. So what is a new source? A new source, that means a new set of standards that the government use to for the new businesses. So they have to pay more and they have to pay more. So it means that this standards is cost more expensive, cost more, and it means that these companies have to use new technology to protect the environment, and which means they can achieve a higher abatement standards. And next, I would like to my teammate would like to show you the graph of this approach, and you can understand more easily of this benefit cost analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to explain the model of dual controls approach and the new source bias. So look at the graph of dual controls approach and new sources bias with model the marginal abatement cost function for new and existing sources. The mark S is for an existing sources, and the mark N is for the new sources. Here we can see two standards. The AX1 standard is more lenient level to represent the state determined standard on existing sources, and the second standard is the AN1 a more stringent control level based on the federal NSPS. And we can see D-mark N1, D-mark N1 corresponding to a ACE N1 is higher than the mass X1, which corresponding to the ACE X1. And the mark and curve is lower than the mark S curve to illustrate the more advanced control technology available to a more modern facility. But actually the firm have the opportunity to choose the more lenient standard because it's cheaper than the second standard. This standard is more costlier, so that's why the firm they just go with this cheaper standard. For example, if the state increase AX1 to AX2, so we can say mark X2 corresponding to AX2 would equal to ACE N1. In doing so, the bias against new construction would be eliminated.
I'm going to talk about the economics of market-based trading programs. So this program allows the trading of abatement allowance between polluters to control the stationary resource in a cost-effective way. So cost-effective way is when they can use the least amount of resources to obtain an objective. And in this market, there are two parties participating. One side is abatement allowance seller, or we can call them that allowance supplier, and the other side is abatement allowance buyer, or we can call them demanders. So as we can see in this graph, the polluters, they are willing to abate A0 amount of abatement, where the market abatement cost equal to the market price of a unit allowance. So the market abatement, the margin abatement cost represent the change in costs associated with the increasing of the quantity of abatement. And we can see here there are trading between these two parties. Like the allowance suppliers, they willing to sell off their excess allowance to the another party because their marginal abatement cost is lower than the market price. So as long as they can sell the abatement allowance at the price that higher than the marginal abatement cost, they willing to sell. And then on the other side, the abatement demanders, they could buy the allowance, the abatement allowance, in order to able to release more emissions instead of have to abate more. So we can see in generally the trading between abatement allowance suppliers and demanders will lead to the level where the margin abatement cost will be similar between these participants.
Now I'm going to talk about the key findings of trading programs. So before they use the trading programs, before they use the market approach, they use the command and control approach to control the sources of pollution. But this control approach is not very cost effective because there is a difference in abatement cost for different producers. So they start using the trading programs. So I'm going to explain a little about how that works. I have two producers. The producer number 1 has 10 permits and the producer number 2 also has 10 permits. But the abatement cost for producer number 1 is $2 and the abatement cost for producer number 2 is $5. So the producer number 2 doesn't want to abate because his cost for abatement is a little high, so he needs to buy some permits. So he buys the permits from producer number 1 so he can pollute more, and he needs to abate less because, like I said, the cost for him to abate is a little high. And for producer number 1, that's okay. He's going to sell his permit because it's okay for him to abate more because the cost for him to abate is lower than producer number 2. So that's how it works. But there is a bad thing about this. And this bad thing is hotspots. If the producer is buying a lot of permits so he can pollute more, he's going to pollute a lot more in just one place, in the stationary place. So he's going to generate a lot of pollution in that same place, and which causes hotspots. And the sources will only control to the point where the abatement cost is equal for all the firms.
Hi, so I'm going to be talking about the key findings or learnings from the dual control approach. So the first thing we notice from the dual control approach is that it gives government a direct supervision over these firms, because the government directly monitors these firms. Second thing we found out from the dual control approach is that it causes a market distortion. As previously mentioned, we have the stationary sources are regulated by two standards. For new or modified stationary sources, they are regulated by the NSPS, which is set by EPA, while for existing sources, they are regulated by the states. The difference between these two standards is that we notice is that the standard set by the state is cheaper and relatively lenient than the standard set by the EPA. The standard set by the EPA is more stringent and costlier, and it usually requires firms to have newer technologies to reduce the emission rates they produce from the production itself. However, these differences causes a market distortion because firms would not have the incentives to obviously initiate new construction because they wouldn't want to be subjected or regulated by the EPA standards, which is stricter and more and costlier for them, because firms are profit maximizers and they would like to minimize their cost as possible. So they would rather keep the existing construction, the ones they have already, their buildings, facilities, anything they have already, and be regulated by state standard, which is more lenient. And also the reason why it is more lenient is because they like the states would like to attract more businesses and also avoid losing firms to other states that would obviously have a more lenient standard. The third thing, so the third key learning from the dual control approach is that it is not cost effective. This is also due to the fact that the stationary sources are regulated by the stationary sources are regulated by two standards. For example, a firm that is regulated by the EPA standard has to adhere to a more stringent standard, and at times it could be costlier due to the requirement to have a newer technology. And a firm that that's facing that cost structure would probably have a more expensive cost structure or a higher cost structure than a firm that is regulated by the states, who has a more lenient standard, right? So because of this, the society will be facing a higher marginal social cost of abatement level than necessary. This in turn will result in wastage of resources without extra or additional benefit to the society. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation.